The morning sun painted golden streaks across the grand facade of Buckingham Palace as Queen Elizabeth II stood at the window of her private sitting room. Today was different from any other day in her 70-year reign. The air buzzed with anticipation that seemed to flow through every corner of the historic building. Staff members moved with purpose through the corridors, their footsteps echoing against marble floors that had witnessed centuries of royal moments. Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, adjusted her navy blue coat as she walked alongside Prince William toward the central balcony. Her children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, followed closely behind, their excitement barely contained. Louis clutched a small Union Jack flag that he had been waving since breakfast, much to the amusement of his siblings. The young prince had been asking questions all morning about the flying machines that would soon fill the sky above them. In another wing of the palace, Prince Charles reviewed the schedule one final time with his private secretary. Every detail had been planned months in advance, yet he felt the familiar flutter of anticipation that came with such significant occasions. This flyover would mark not just his mother's incredible milestone, but also represent the strength and tradition of the monarchy that would one day pass to him. He straightened his tie and made his way toward the main gathering area where family members were beginning to assemble. The Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla, stood near a tall window overlooking them all, watching as thousands of people continued to arrive. The street below looked like a river of red, white, and blue as spectators claimed their spots along the route. She could hear the distant sound of military bands practicing their formations, the crisp notes of brass instruments carrying on the morning breeze. Security personnel moved discreetly among the crowds, their trained eyes scanning for any potential issues while trying to remain invisible to the celebrating public. Princess Anne arrived at the palace earlier than expected, as was her custom. She had always been punctual, a trait that served her well during her extensive royal duties. Today, she wore her military medals with particular pride, knowing that the flyover would honor not just her mother, but all those who had served the Commonwealth with distinction. She exchanged quiet words with palace staff, ensuring that every protocol would be followed to perfection. Inside the palace kitchen, the catering staff put finishing touches on refreshments that would sustain the royal family throughout the long day ahead. Silver trays held delicate sandwiches and pastries, while crystal decanters contained the finest beverages from the royal cellars. Everything had been prepared according to traditions that stretched back generations, yet adapted for the unique requirements of this historic celebration. The Queen's lady-in-waiting helped arrange the final details of Her Majesty's outfit, a bright green coat that would stand out beautifully against the palace's neutral stone backdrop. The color had been chosen specifically to ensure visibility from the aircraft that would soon thunder overhead. Every element of the Queen's appearance had been carefully considered, from her pearl necklace to her matching hat, each piece carrying personal significance and royal tradition. Young cousins and extended family members gathered in the palace's grand reception rooms, their conversations mixing excitement with nervous energy. Some had attended similar events before, while others were experiencing their first major royal celebration. The children practiced their waves, giggling as they tried to copy the precise royal gesture they had seen their elders perform countless times. Outside, the morning crowd continued to grow as people from across the United Kingdom and around the world claimed their viewing spots along the mall. Street vendors sold commemorative items, while police officers helped direct the steady stream of visitors toward designated areas. The atmosphere felt electric with shared anticipation, as if the entire city was holding its breath waiting for the spectacular display that was about to unfold. As the appointed time drew closer, the royal family began their final preparations to step onto the famous balcony where they would witness history being written across the London sky. Each family member carried with them the weight of tradition and the joy of celebration, knowing that this moment would be remembered for generations to come. The stage was set for an unforgettable display of aerial excellence that would honor 7 decades of dedicated royal service. The palace staff opened the tall French doors leading to the central balcony, and a wave of sound rushed in from the massive crowd gathered below. The roar of thousands of voices created a wall of excitement that made even the most experienced royal family members pause for a moment. Queen Elizabeth stepped forward first, her presence immediately recognized by the crowd, whose cheers grew even louder. She waved with the practiced grace of someone who had performed this gesture countless times. Yet today, it felt especially meaningful. Prince William helped guide his youngest son, Louis, to the balcony railing, ensuring the energetic 4-year-old had a clear view while staying safely positioned. The young prince immediately began waving his flag with enthusiasm, pointing excitedly at the sky even though the aircraft were still minutes away. His older siblings, George and Charlotte, stood more composedly beside their mother, though their eyes sparkled with anticipation as they scanned the horizon for the first signs of the approaching display. The Queen positioned herself at the center of the balcony, flanked by her immediate family members according to carefully planned protocols. Prince Charles stood to her right, his posture reflecting both respect for his mother and awareness of his future role. The Duchess of Cornwall took her designated position, smiling warmly at the crowd while keeping one eye on the sky. Each family member understood their role in this historic moment, representing not just themselves but the institution of monarchy itself. Below them, the mall stretched like a red carpet lined with thousands of spectators who had arrived hours earlier to secure the best viewing positions. Union Jack flags fluttered in the gentle breeze, creating a sea of patriotic colors that extended as far as the eye could see. Professional photographers positioned themselves strategically, their long lenses ready to capture every expression and gesture from the royal family above. In the distance, the first rumble of aircraft engines could be heard, though the planes themselves remained invisible against the cloudy London sky. The sound grew gradually stronger, causing a ripple of excitement to pass through both the crowd below and the royal family on the balcony. Princess Charlotte tugged gently on her mother's coat sleeve, whispering a question about when the planes would appear. Catherine leaned down to reassure her daughter, pointing toward the direction from which the aircraft would emerge. Security personnel remained alert throughout the surrounding area, their communication devices crackling quietly with updates about the approaching formation. Every detail had been coordinated with military precision, from the timing of the flyover to the exact positioning of each aircraft. The Royal Air Force pilots had practiced this routine countless times, ensuring that their tribute to the Queen would be executed flawlessly. Prince Louis suddenly pointed toward the sky and shouted something that was lost in the crowd noise, but his excitement was unmistakable. His grandmother, the Queen, noticed his enthusiasm and smiled warmly, remembering similar moments from when his father and uncle were young. The continuity of royal traditions passing from one generation to the next felt especially poignant during this celebration of her own long reign. The crowd's anticipation reached a crescendo as the distant sound of engines became more distinct. Conversations quieted as people strained to catch the first glimpse of the approaching aircraft. Even the royal family members found themselves leaning slightly forward, their usual composed demeanor giving way to genuine excitement about the spectacular display they were about to witness. Princess Anne adjusted her position to ensure she could observe both the flyover and her mother's reaction to it. Having served in various military capacities herself, she understood the incredible skill and coordination required for such a precise aerial display. The months of planning and practice that had gone into this moment represented the dedication and professionalism that characterized the armed forces throughout the Commonwealth. As the sound grew louder, a hush fell over the massive crowd below. Parents lifted small children onto their shoulders, while elderly spectators raised their eyes hopefully toward the sky. Camera phones appeared in thousands of hands, though many people seemed torn between capturing the moment and experiencing it fully with their own eyes. The royal family on the balcony faced the same choice, though their training and public appearances helped them maintain their focus on the unfolding spectacle. The Queen's expression remained composed, though those who knew her well could detect the quiet satisfaction in her eyes. This flyover represented more than just an impressive display of military capability. It symbolized the loyalty and respect of the armed forces she had served as commander-in-chief for 7 decades. Each aircraft in the approaching formation carried with it the weight of that relationship and the gratitude of a grateful nation. The moment had arrived when the sky above London would be transformed into a canvas for one of the most spectacular aerial displays in recent memory, witnessed by millions around the world, but experienced most intimately by the royal family standing on the famous balcony of Buckingham Palace. The first aircraft appeared as tiny specks against the gray London sky, but within seconds they grew larger and more distinct as the formation approached the palace. A collective gasp rose from the crowd below as the lead planes became clearly visible, their sleek forms cutting through the air with military precision. The Queen lifted her hand slightly to shade her eyes, watching intently as the carefully choreographed display began to unfold above her home. Prince Louis let out a delighted squeal that could be heard even above the growing roar of jet engines, his small hands clapping enthusiastically as the first wave of aircraft thundered overhead. The Typhoon fighters led the formation, their gray camouflage paint schemes making them look like steel arrows against the cloudy backdrop. Each pilot maintained perfect spacing and altitude, the result of countless hours of practice and the highest levels of professional skill. Catherine instinctively reached for her youngest son's hand, not from concern, but from a natural maternal response to such an overwhelming sensory experience. The noise was incredible, vibrating through the stone structure of the palace itself and causing windows to rattle slightly in their frames. Yet the royal family remained steady on the balcony, their faces turned upward in appreciation of this magnificent tribute to the Queen's long reign. Following the modern fighters came the historic aircraft, each one representing a different era of British aviation history. A formation of Spitfires appeared next, their distinctive elliptical wings immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with World War II history. These were the same type of aircraft that had defended British skies during the darkest days of the war, and their presence in today's celebration created a powerful connection between past and present. The Queen's expression softened noticeably as the Spitfires passed overhead, their Merlin engines producing the characteristic sound that had once meant salvation for a nation under siege. She had lived through that era as a young princess, watching anxiously as brave pilots took to the skies to defend her country. Now, decades later, these restored aircraft served as flying monuments to courage and sacrifice that she had witnessed firsthand. Prince Charles pointed out specific details to his wife Camilla, his extensive knowledge of military history allowing him to identify each aircraft type as it passed overhead. His years of service in the Royal Navy had given him deep appreciation for the skill required to maintain such precise formations while dealing with variable wind conditions and the pressure of performing before millions of viewers worldwide. The crowd below erupted in spontaneous applause as a formation of red arrows swept into view, their bright red Hawk aircraft trailing streams of colored smoke in patriotic red, white, and blue. The Precision Aerobatic Team had represented British excellence around the world for decades, and their appearance over Buckingham Palace felt like a homecoming celebration. The smoke trails created temporary artwork across the sky, forming patterns that would fade within minutes, but remain in memory forever. Princess Charlotte stood on her tiptoes to get a better view, her face filled with wonder at the spectacular display unfolding above her. This was likely her most vivid royal memory so far, an experience that would stay with her throughout her life and perhaps influence her own understanding of duty and service. The tradition of royal celebrations was being passed to a new generation through moments like these. Behind the red arrows came larger aircraft, including transport planes and helicopters that demonstrated the full range of capabilities possessed by the Royal Air Force. Each aircraft type had played crucial roles in humanitarian missions, peacekeeping operations, and national defense throughout the Queen's reign. Their participation in today's flyover represented not just military might, but also the diverse ways that air power had served the Commonwealth and the world. The palace staff on ground level watched through windows and doorways, many of them stepping outside momentarily to witness this historic occasion. For them, working at Buckingham Palace meant being present for many significant events, but the combination of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and such an extensive aerial display created a truly once-in-a-lifetime experience that they would share with their families for years to come. Prince William helped his children identify different aircraft types, turning the spectacle into an impromptu educational experience. Young Prince George listened intently to his father's explanations, his serious expression suggesting that he was storing away every detail of this extraordinary day. The future king was learning through direct experience about the traditions and relationships that would one day become his responsibility. As wave after wave of aircraft continued to pass overhead, the royal family maintained their positions on the balcony despite the overwhelming noise and sensory input. Each plane represented thousands of hours of training, maintenance, and preparation by dedicated service members who had worked tirelessly to honor their queen through this aerial tribute. The precision and skill on display reflected the very best traditions of British military excellence. The Queen occasionally raised her hand in acknowledgement, her gestures perfectly timed to coincide with particularly impressive formations or historically significant aircraft. Her deep understanding of military traditions and her personal relationships with service members throughout the Commonwealth gave special meaning to each wave and nod. This was more than a celebration. It was a conversation between a sovereign and her armed forces, conducted through the universal language of respect and appreciation. The most dramatic moment of the flyover arrived as a massive formation of 70 aircraft approached the palace, representing each year of the Queen's extraordinary reign. The skies seemed to darken momentarily as the enormous group of planes blocked out portions of sunlight, creating shifting shadows across the mall and the palace grounds. This was the centerpiece of the entire display, an aerial representation of 7 decades of dedicated service that took the breath away from everyone watching. Prince Louis had grown quieter during the larger formations, perhaps overwhelmed by the incredible scale of what he was witnessing. His mother, Catherine, knelt down beside him, pointing out how the planes formed patterns in the sky like a giant puzzle. The young prince nodded seriously, his earlier excitement transformed in a focused concentration as he tried to understand the magnitude of the tribute being paid to his great-grandmother. The Queen stood motionless except for her gentle waves, but those who knew her well could see the emotion in her posture and expression. 70 years of service, of duty, of placing country before personal preference, was being honored by these skilled pilots who had trained for months to execute this perfect formation. Each aircraft represented not just military capability, but also the loyalty and respect of the nation she had served throughout her adult life. Cameras clicked frantically from press positions around the palace grounds as photographers captured every angle of this historic moment. The images being taken would appear in newspapers and magazines around the world, preserving this celebration for future generations to study and admire. Yet for the royal family on the balcony, this was a deeply personal experience that transcended its public significance. Princess Anne watched the formation with particular intensity, her military background allowing her to appreciate the incredible skill required to coordinate so many aircraft in such a confined airspace above central London. The timing had to be perfect, with each pilot maintaining exact positions while dealing with air traffic, weather conditions, and the pressure of performing before a global audience. This level of precision exemplified the professionalism that characterized the armed forces throughout the Commonwealth. As the massive formation passed directly overhead, the combined sound of 70 aircraft engines created a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of Buckingham Palace. Windows vibrated, car alarms triggered throughout the surrounding neighborhoods, and the crowd below fell silent in awe of the overwhelming display of coordinated power. This was more than entertainment. It was a demonstration of the capabilities that had kept the realm safe throughout the Queen's reign. The Duchess of Cornwall shielded her ears slightly from the intense noise while maintaining her composed public appearance. The experience was physically demanding even for those simply watching from the ground, making the skill of the pilots who maintained perfect formation while managing such complex aircraft even more impressive. Each aviator in that formation represented years of training and absolute dedication to their craft. Prince Charles found himself reflecting on the continuity represented by this moment. His mother had watched similar displays throughout her reign, from the early jets of the 1950s through the advanced fighters of today. Technology had evolved dramatically, but the underlying relationship between the sovereign and the armed forces remained constant. One day, he would stand on this same balcony receiving similar tributes, carrying forward traditions that stretched back centuries. Below the balcony, the massive crowd had fallen into an almost reverential silence, despite the overwhelming noise from above. Thousands of faces were turned upward, many with tears in their eyes as they witnessed this unprecedented display of respect for their queen. Children sat on parents' shoulders, elderly veterans stood at attention, and visitors from around the world shared in a moment that belonged to everyone present. The formation began to separate as it moved beyond the palace, individual aircraft groups heading toward their designated return paths. The red arrows remained visible longest, their colored smoke trails creating temporary artwork against the London sky that would fade within minutes, but remain in memory forever. The symmetry and precision of their display represented British excellence at its finest. Prince William helped his children wave at the departing aircraft, encouraging them to show appreciation for the pilots who had created this incredible spectacle. Young Prince George waved with particular enthusiasm, perhaps understanding better than his siblings the significance of what they had just witnessed. These were the kinds of experiences that shaped future monarchs, creating personal connections to the traditions they would one day inherit. As the last aircraft disappeared into the distance, an extraordinary quiet fell over the scene. The sudden absence of engine noise made ordinary sounds seem amplified. The rustling of flags in a breeze, the murmur of conversation from the crowd below, the clicking of camera shutters capturing final images. The royal family remained on the balcony for several more minutes, allowing the crowds to see them and share in the conclusion of this remarkable tribute. The Queen's expression showed quiet satisfaction as she took one final look at the sky where the aircraft had performed their aerial ballet. 70 years of service had been honored in the most spectacular way possible, with precision, skill, and respect that reflected the very best qualities of the nation she had devoted her life to serving. This moment would be remembered as one of the defining images of her Platinum Jubilee celebration, a perfect fusion of tradition, excellence, and genuine emotion that captured the essence of her remarkable reign. The silence that followed the departure of the last aircraft felt almost sacred, as if the entire city of London was taking a collective breath after witnessing something truly extraordinary. The Queen remained at the balcony railing for several long moments, her gaze fixed on the sky where the aircraft had disappeared, perhaps reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment of celebration. The weight of 70 years of service, of countless decisions and ceremonies, seemed to settle around her like a comfortable cloak. Prince Louis, no longer able to contain his excitement, tugged on his father's sleeve and pointed enthusiastically at the empty sky, chattering rapidly about the flying machines he had just seen. His innocent delight brought smiles to the faces of the adults around him, reminding everyone that this historic moment was also a family celebration. The future of the monarchy stood represented on that balcony through 3 generations, each connected by bonds of duty, tradition, and genuine affection. As the royal family began to step back from the balcony, the crowd below erupted in sustained applause that echoed off the surrounding buildings. Thousands of voices joined in singing, "God Save the Queen," the familiar melody carried by the wind across Hyde Park and beyond. The spontaneous tribute from ordinary citizens seemed to move the Queen visibly, her usual composed expression softening as she acknowledged their affection with gentle waves. Catherine gathered her children closer as they prepared to leave the balcony, ensuring that each of them understood they had just witnessed something they would remember for the rest of their lives. Princess Charlotte asked quietly when they might see such aircraft again, while Prince George remained unusually serious, perhaps beginning to understand the significance of the moment. These experiences would shape their understanding of royal duty and the relationship between the monarchy and the armed forces. Inside the palace, staff members who had watched the flyover from various windows and doorways began to resume their normal duties, though conversations buzzed with excitement about what they had just witnessed. Many had worked at Buckingham Palace for decades, attending countless state occasions and royal celebrations, yet they agreed that this flyover would rank among the most memorable moments of their careers. The combination of the Queen's milestone and the spectacular aerial display had created something truly special. Prince Charles walked slowly back into the palace beside his mother, their conversation too quiet for others to hear, but their body language suggesting a shared satisfaction with how the day had unfolded. As heir to the throne, he understood that he was witnessing not just a celebration of his mother's reign, but also a preview of the kinds of tributes that would one day honor his own service. The continuity of royal traditions felt especially meaningful during such moments of transition between generations. The Duchess of Cornwall paused to look back at the sky one final time before following the others inside, her expression showing genuine appreciation for the skill and dedication displayed by the pilots. Having married into the royal family later in life, she brought a different perspective to such occasions, seeing them with eyes that remembered life outside the monarchy while fully embracing her role within it. Her presence added depth to the family group that had shared this remarkable experience. Princess, and ever practical, was already discussing logistics with palace staff about the next elements of the day's schedule. Yet even her efficient demeanor couldn't completely hide her appreciation for what had just occurred. As someone with extensive military experience herself, she understood better than most the months of planning and practice that had gone into creating those few minutes of aerial perfection above Buckingham Palace. Outside, the massive crowd began to disperse slowly, though many people remained in the area, hoping to catch additional glimpses of the royal family throughout the day. Street vendors resumed selling commemorative items, while police officers helped manage the orderly movement of thousands of visitors toward nearby transport stations. The atmosphere remained festive, with strangers sharing their experiences and excitement about what they had just witnessed together. The aircraft themselves had returned to their home bases across the United Kingdom, where ground crews and support personnel who had worked tirelessly behind the scenes could finally celebrate the successful completion of their mission. Each pilot would file detailed reports about their participation in the flyover, but the formal paperwork could hardly capture the emotional impact of the tribute they had delivered to their commander-in-chief. Back inside Buckingham Palace, the Queen retired to her private apartments where she could reflect quietly on the morning's events. The photographs and video footage would preserve the visual record of this historic flyover, but her personal memories would hold details that no camera could capture. The expressions on her family members' faces, the sound of her great-grandson's delighted laughter, the feeling of standing on that balcony while 70 aircraft honored her life of service. As afternoon sunlight streamed through the palace windows, the building seemed to settle back into its normal rhythms, though an undercurrent of satisfaction and accomplishment flowed through every corridor. The Jubilee flyover had exceeded everyone's expectations, creating a moment of national celebration that would be remembered and cherished for generations to come. The Queen's 70 years of dedicated service had been honored in the most spectacular way possible, with precision, skill, and genuine affection that perfectly captured the relationship between the sovereign and her people. The sky above London had briefly become a canvas for gratitude, respect, and love, painted by skilled pilots whose tribute would echo through history as one of the finest moments of the Platinum Jubilee celebration.